Okay, so continuing with project 2, after we decided on our line work for our design here, what we want to do next is consider the color that we're going to use. So as you can see, what I've done here in this little sketchbook, any extra paper you have will do, like I said for the class, is to create two little versions of the design that I wanted to do. So that gives me an idea of how close I'm coming to hitting my objectives for this project. Contrasts of temperature and specifically contrasts of value. I have used for the temperature cadmium orange, primary blue and cadmium yellow medium. And for the value in particular, I used three colors. I used magenta, quinacridone magenta, dioxazine purple, and ultramarine blue. And of course, white and black for both as possibilities. Now again, with temperature, what I'm looking for here, and what you should be getting out of this, is warm and cool colors worked back and forth or next to each other. Right? With this one here, that you can see, with this cadmium orange, if we consider the warm and cool colors that we use here have gone across the color wheel, right, directly to affect this feeling here of playing around with the warm and the cool. And what's interesting is, because I have this blue around here, and you can see not all of these blues are the same darkness, I've lightened them a little. All of that blue has really kind of cooled down that cadmium orange, while at the same time really making it vibrate. I've used three colors here, and again I have some of the yellows on the corner for variety. With the one specifically dealing with value, where you need to push and show back and forth dark, light, middle values, what can you do with that? Right? I am doing a number of things here, and I'll paint it on the large one to show it, as I'm playing around with that ultramarine blue, where it's lighter in the background, so to speak, and it becomes a background, right? Because it's behind these, and then I have it here where it's darker in my little color sketch. So where it's darker, I can have these magentas, quinacridone magenta, kind of pop forward, at the same time influencing this magenta where it's darker and a little lighter where I've tinted it with white. I've brought that magenta over here as well. The dioxazine purple, the coolest and the darkest of the colors that I'm using of these three, I've played around, what can I do where it's extremely dark here, and then how can I manipulate it where it's not quite as dark out of the tube, and then with some white, while still showing how these colors can bounce around because of the value shifts that have occurred as they're next to each other and within the color itself. So I'm gonna do a larger layout here from my sketch with these colors on this paper here, just to give you an idea of how I worked this out, right? So I took some white, moved it over there to my ultramarine blue, and so I'd like that to be a consistent pastel tinted blue. At least down to here. these demonstrations, you have more time to work than I do when I'm demonstrating, and actually showing one complete design or a lot of completion towards a design within minutes, meaning that you have weeks to work out what's going to be the most effective. I want to make that lighter. Okay, now you can see here in the halfway point of the sketch that I want to bring a little bit more blue into that. Keeping it monochromatic, right? I'm only working with the one color in the white. And then I begin this. It's nice while the paint is still wet here to kind of blend that together. To kind of give it a gradation. It's helpful as we move along with these projects. I do have a larger brush here, a cheap one that I got. I'm not using that. I'm using the largest brush that came from the kit, but if you have a larger brush, it can help you cover the surface area. In a more smooth and gradual way with the brush strokes. Some people like to put masking tape or even just Scotch tape along the edges because they really want a nice clean edge. Of course, you could do that if you want to. So what you should realize here when I'm doing this one now is that I'm using all cool colors. And they're all dark. And I'm playing around with how I can adjust their values in such a way as to show the potential for variation with these colors and their value shifts. So I've cleaned off my brush, and what I did here on my initial sketch was to take dioxazine purple as it is and really put that down there so it stands out and away from that lighter edge. It's very dark and it really closes in that corner. While I have the dioxazine purple on my brush, I'm going to go ahead and play around with what I did here. I like this. That's not actually from the tube. I just touched a little white into that, keeping it dark. . It's a good idea to paint what's going to be behind something here. So when you paint on top, that color that goes on top will be on top of the paint that you put down. It's also a good idea, until you're accustomed to it, to maybe mix up more of the color that you want so it's not so random. I know I can match up this color every time just by bringing some white into it. So I'll do that. And then here I want to just bring a little bit of white, bring a lighter version of that. And what I expect to see from these is that not only can you adjust these colors, which I know you can because of project 1.3, but based on your selection of color, you'll know which ones are darker and lighter, which ones are warmer and cooler here now. And you'll be able to make some placements with these that show this interaction that happens, that Joseph Albers' interaction of color. And remember, his was a name from the vocab. But also to be able to manipulate and see differences in value. Now I'm just going to go ahead and see how background is literally created and foreground is created when something is darker or lighter. And this the simple value of one of these objects being lighter or darker. So here with my study, I had that magenta. It wasn't completely from the tube. I'd added a little bit of black to that magenta to darken it up, to create a shade for it, so it doesn't pop too far in any one direction from that dioxazine purple that I just put down there. I'm going to clean that because it had some black in it. And now, right here, taking some of that white again. This is monochromatic. I haven't used any of its complement to change these. I could, but I'm not. In this case, I used some black up here. Now I'm just using some white or less white. And then finally here where it's just a little bit darker than that one. So what I wanted to do is have these quinacridone magenta balls stand out from the blue background and also differentiate from one to the other. Same with the dioxazine purple. I can see there one another thing just by switching that value, and then this becomes a foreground, this becomes background, even though it's lighter. So we have this back and forth that plays around with that. And then of course, they're all dealing with cools, but even the magenta is a little warmer than the cooler dioxazine purple. So I'm playing around with how those two will work. Even though I'm dealing with value, I'm still playing around with temperature. Much the same way as I was thinking about my temperature design, which I did not do here. Still value comes into play with that as well. So that is project 2 and how to proceed with some sketches and color sketches, and then going ahead and proceeding with your final designs.